So, Travis, thank you very much for coming in on a Sunday. You're one of the rare guests that we've had that actually grew up in Kelowna. I understand you were 3 years old when your parents moved you here from Edmonton.
Yes.
Do you remember much about that? I guess you're pretty young.
Yeah, I was pretty young. I have some very vague memories of St. Albert where we grew up. And then, I remember moving here. And obviously that's when I started paying more attention, I guess, to what was going on.
Right.
And
It's basically like get in the car seat, we're going.
yeah, yeah. And so my parents they moved here and they moved to the west side. So I grew up there. I think the biggest changes happened there during my youth. I remember I'd go off and play junior hockey since I was 16. So every summer I'd come back and just seeing the expansion between Rose Valley off the highway there all the way into West Bank where the old movie theater was.
Mm-hmm.
Just watching that grow and get bigger, and the golf course going in, the Two Eagles there, and all the houses, and just the Walmart, just kind of everything just slowly just expanding, getting bigger and bigger. But the biggest thing was probably when they put the overpass in, because you're reading about it on Castnet, and you're like, oh, it'd be cool and all this. Then you come back and you just see this thing. You're like, man, like this is just monstrous.
The bridge, yeah.
Yeah, and the new bridge and everything. So, and just every year, now it's harder to notice the changes. But yeah, growing up, there was definitely some big drastic ones that would happen over, obviously, the 8 months I'd be away playing hockey, whether it was juniors or university or pro. So
right. I think the highway was only 2 lanes a long time ago.
Yeah, it was, but there was less traffic, so it wasn't as bad. I remember being able to get from my parents' house in Rose Valley to downtown in like 10 minutes.
Right.
And now it'd be like 45 probably.
Right.
Yeah.
And that drawbridge, sometimes you'd have to wait, right? If a sailboat came through.
You'd have to wait, and then every once in a while you get real lucky and it would stick at the top. And I would have to get the engineers to come in and get it functioning again. So that'd be a little frustrating.
Right.
But
totally different now.
Yeah, completely different. And then at one point, they didn't allow sailboats to go under it because of the faulty mechanical arm on it that it might stick at the top, and then it just caused too much of a backlog in traffic. So they just eventually just said, you guys have to stay on your respective side of the bridge and on the lake. So
I guess if someone needed to go to the hospital, it could be a little dangerous.
Yeah. Very dangerous. And then the middle lane on the bridge would change depending on the severe or the thickness of traffic.
Right.
And so sometimes you'd be in the middle lane, all of a sudden it'd start flashing red that you had to quickly try and get over. And just different times, I guess.
Yeah. So you grew up playing hockey. Do you remember how old you were when you first put skates on?
Yeah, I was, I think I was 4 years old. In Rose Valley, there's a pond up there, and so my dad would take me there. And when I was just around 4, we'd walk on the pond and kind of just get used to being on ice. And then threw me in skates, and then slowly tried to learn how to skate. And then I was in, organized hockey since I was 5. So it's been a while, yeah.
Yeah, I remember those days a long time ago. I was in Eastern Canada, suburbs of Toronto, but I remember taking buses and going to play different teams and stuff like that. Did you do a lot of traveling when you were young? Or was it mostly local?
Yeah, we would travel. I mean, I think the furthest we would go, every once in a while there'd be a tournament down in Vancouver, but mostly I think up to Kamloops would be like kind of the farthest we would travel on a regular weekend.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a couple hours. So, I mean, back then it seems like a further distance in time frame being in the vehicle, but
yeah.
It was a blast.
Right.
Yeah.
Like most kids, you had dreams of playing in the NHL.
I still do.
Right?
Yeah.
I still do.
Yeah.
But how did that work out? Like, tell us some of the struggles like a young person goes through. It's so competitive.
Yeah.
When we watch a game, I mean, it's amazing the level of talent in the NHL. And tell us, some of the struggles you go through as a young person with that dream.
Yeah, I mean, you try and do everything you can to make the NHL. And for myself, around like that 14, 15, kids started getting committed and dedicated to more than just practicing on the ice. And I wasn't quite there mentally yet. Mm-hmm. And so it took me a while until I was about 19 or 20 to actually figure out that, oh, I need to train off the ice to get better on the ice. That concept wasn't quite as popular, but the kids that did do it, you saw a huge progression in their game.
Yeah.
And it's more than just the hour you practice on the ice or, an hour in the gym. It's a full-time job for these kids, and it's tough. Like, you have to have the mental capacity to be able to commit to it. Mm-hmm. And I'd say it's harder now than it was back in the day for me, at least. The hockey's become such a business.
Yeah.
That it's hard for kids to get recognized. They really got to put the effort in about almost 24 hours a day.
Yeah. So what age do kids have to kind of decide, is this going to be a career or is it just a hobby that I enjoy doing? Competition is fun. Like, I enjoyed it, but I never rose to a level where I was going to be, seriously competitive. But I enjoyed the competition. But there's obviously a point in a kid's life where they have to say, well, am I going to really go for this, or is it just something that's really fun to do in the winter season?
Yeah, I would say for us, like when I grew up, you're probably looking around at like 16, 17 in there, and now you're looking at 14, 15.
Wow.
Yeah, it's young. And I don't think, every kid's committed more or less, but now they got to be committed big time at 14, 15 years old. And like that whole, it's a 24-hour thing. It's not like you're training 24 hours a day, but you're thinking about getting the proper rest, maybe sacrificing not playing a video game when all your other buddies are doing that. And you kind of have to put on hold a little bit of maybe some of that extra fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Drinking.
Yeah, well, yes, unfortunately, some kids start that at 15.
Right.
But yeah, they're, going to parties, right? Things like that where you got to be really committed, where it's a Friday night, all your buddies are going to maybe go to the movie and you got a game the next day, so you have to stay home, right? So you kind of have to figure out what's most important for you.
Yeah.
And some kids might look at it like, they're giving up a lot. For me, I did all that stuff. I just didn't do the off-ice training where I think that would have benefited me the most. But my goal was to try and play at the highest level possible. So I didn't care about that other stuff. Mm-hmm. I wanted to play in the NHL. Like, that was my goal.
Yeah.
And so that would have been worth it. And even actually the path my career took was worth it. I was happy with everything I did and sacrificed growing up, because there's always another party. There's always another movie to go to. There's always something else you can do, but you only really have one shot to make it in your career. And if hockey is that career, then you got to take the sacrifices when you can.
Yeah. Do you remember how old you were when you realized this is not going to happen?
To the NHL?
Yeah.
Around that, you don't get drafted, obviously. That
right.
Pretty big eye opener. But you start to realize it, 17, 18, 19, you're like, I might have missed the window on this one. And you still work, because you never know. There's always, you hear these stories. One of the schools I played at, there was a kid there, and he ended up getting scouted. I think he was 22 or something. So, there's these outside chances still. So you never really give up on that dream, So I guess I finally came to realization probably around 24 that, okay, I might not be
right. Yeah.
getting my chance, but you never know, right? So you just keep working hard and keep having fun with it. And maybe someone notices you and gives you a shot, and you don't know, right? So you don't give up on it ever. You just start to kind of come to realization that it's a smaller opportunity or a smaller window that it could happen.
Dwindling. So you became a coach.
Yeah.
When did you start to transition your mindset between, this is not going to happen for me realistically, and I can help young guys, avoid some of the mistakes I made, start a little bit earlier, get in a good training regimen.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of value to offer. When did your mindset start to shift?
I've always liked working with younger kids. So after I started working hockey schools and I was playing junior still, and I enjoyed that. Even at 18, 19 years old, you still have a lot of knowledge you can pass on to 14-year-olds and 12-year-olds and 10-year-olds.
Definitely.
And so started working a couple hockey schools here in town, and just, I don't know, another secondary passion of mine. And then as I just continued through my playing career and then going into university and then studying exercise science, I was able to get more knowledge to pass on to these younger players. And I always knew that when I was done playing, that's the path I would get into. And even when I was playing over in Germany, you know, you're 27, 28, 30 years old, 33 years old. And you got guys on your team that are 18 years old. So you're almost, twice their age.
Right.
And you're able just to kind of give them just little pointers, whether it's on the ice, off the ice. And like you said, kind of the knowledge that you didn't have at their age to try and help them and help further their career along. And so I guess to answer your question shortly, around like 1920, I started kind of figuring out that this is something I really enjoyed.
Do you have kids?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have a 2-year-old.
2-year-old, so no skates yet?
No, I put him in rollerblades about 6 months ago. It might have been a little early. He seemed to enjoy it, but I definitely had to hold him up.
Right, for sure. So what do you plan to buy first pair of skates, or would you start with rentals?
Yeah, skates aren't cheap, so.
Right.
But I think for that age, you can get skates relatively cheap, just because they understand that they're going to grow out of them in a few weeks, more or less. We took him to the game yesterday. Trained about 6 of the Okanagan Rockets, the minor midget team. So all these kids are 15 years old. So my wife and I and the little guy, we went and watched them play yesterday. And one of the moms asked, "Oh, are you going to put him in skates?" And I don't know, maybe at the end of summer. He's still learning to walk and get more comfortable. And so I don't want to rush him too quick and maybe not have him enjoy it because he can't do it that well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's kind
if he associates it with falling down and hitting the ice and stuff like that, he's not going to like it so much.
Yeah, so you kind of have to weigh out the risk reward of that. So we'll definitely wait maybe the end of winter. We'll see.
Right. So kids, they need to train. If they're serious about it, they got to train in the off season too, right? It's not just during the hockey season. Like, you should be staying in shape all summer.
Yeah. Well, so kind of the other way around, where more or less guys would always train in the off season, the summer months, but then they wouldn't lift weights or do anything during the hockey season. They would only practice and play their games. Now you have to train 12 months of the year. So your summer is your time where you can make the biggest gains because you're not skating as much, so you can work out a lot harder in the gym. During the season with games and practices, you have less time to be in the gym, and then you got to make sure you don't end up getting too sore or too tired, because then that will affect your on-ice performance.
Right.
But you still have to train during the season. So that training becomes a little trickier, and you have to be a lot more strategic with what you're doing and when you're doing it, what you're doing, and for how long. And it has to be based around practices and games. But yeah, you definitely have to train constantly now in order to get improvement.
Yeah. So most of us, we go to the gym, we're just trying to get in shape, right? In general sense. But for hockey, what sort of muscles do you want guys to train and focus on?
Well, the biggest thing is lower body power. So if they're hamstrings, glutes, quads, those are the primary muscles that will be used during skating. And then biggest thing for me is I look at injury prevention first. If my athletes can stay healthy, then they can continue to train and continue to have forward progression. So you can train hard and you can get strong and explosive, but if you're not having an emphasis on staying healthy, then all of a sudden you might get injured because you're kind of pushing the envelope too much. And then now you got to take a week or 2 weeks off, and then maybe you lose some of that progression that you got, some of the benefits from the strength training. So I'll always err on the side of caution and make sure we just have constant forward progression, because that's more beneficial than pushing hard, possibly getting an injury, and then having to dial back, and then push hard, and then possibly getting an injury and dial back. And also for the psyche of that athlete that kind of continues to injure himself, it's tough, because you think like, oh man, I was doing so good. All of a sudden now I got to pull back and start fresh a little bit and then go back. And so it becomes frustrating. Like I said, I've been there. Before my education, I would train hard, but you don't know what you're doing, so you're not training smart.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that was stupid.
Well, what is some of the biggest mistakes that people make in the gym or in a hockey practice?
In the gym, just not paying attention to their form and technique, putting more focus on how much weight they're lifting rather than how well are they lifting that weight.
Right.
Because I can, see a guy in the gym and he might, let's say, hypothetically squat 500 pounds. That sounds great on paper, right? You look at it like, wow, this guy squatted 500 pounds, but all of a sudden you see him do it and you're like, oof, that's scary. Like
he blows his knees out, he can't skate.
His knees, his back, whatever. Like, it's scary. Like, so I'd rather see a guy maybe squat 300 pounds. It doesn't look as good on paper, but you watch, you're like, wow, that's a really good squat. He's getting more benefit from that strength, and that strength will transfer onto the ice better.
Yeah.
So I think guys get caught up in the numbers too much rather than the actual takeaway from the program.
Mm-hmm. What about concussions? So I know in football and hockey, this is a big issue.
Yeah.
Kind of a big controversy.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that? Is there the helmet technology getting better, or is it prevention? Like, how do we deal with this?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think the NHL just settled on their lawsuit for their concussion stuff.
And that was mostly older players.
Yeah, the players from back in the day for their settlement. It's one of those things. I think a lot of them happens from whiplash. So I don't know if the helmets help as much because just the speed and the physicality of the game, a lot of it is just that brain kind of swishing around in the skull.
So your neck, like your head keeps going, you hit the boards and your head keeps going. And that's
or even
whiplash.
but even some open ice hits too, right? You get hit, all of a sudden your body goes, and all of a sudden your head just kind of like that bobblehead just starts bopping around. So,
and that's like a concussion is like a bruise, right?
Yeah,
on the brain.
Yeah. It basically ends up like slapping the inside of your skull and causes a bruise. So I mean, to prevent it, get faster so no one can catch you.
Right.
No, but I think just strengthening the neck muscles.
Yeah.
And just if you're a little stronger through the neck and shoulders, then less chance that your head will kind of flap around.
Right.
When getting hit. So.
And I think you were kind of half joking, but I think speed is important.
Yeah.
Because it is much harder to hit someone.
Yeah.
Especially for a big guy, like a checker, a bruiser. It's harder for him to hit the guy who's really fast, right?
Yeah.
So how do you work on speed? Is it just sprints on the ice, or?
Obviously, your skating technique helps a tremendous amount, right? The more efficient you are, the better you're going to be. But sooner or later, if all you do is on ice stuff, you're not actually getting stronger or more explosive. You're not training the muscle in the same capacity. You're more just learning the skill. Mm-hmm. And so you got to be in the gym, you got to get stronger, you got to get more explosive. And then there's certain speed drills you can do off the ice that will help how fast you can move your legs and your feet. Right. And then you have to transfer that all onto the ice. So it's a full puzzle. I look at it, 1,000-piece puzzle. There's so many different little aspects of it that make that full picture. So if you just spend too much time on one portion of it, you're not going to get that full picture. So
yeah. So tell us, if a 14-year-old kid is listening to this, and he's got a dream of being in the NHL, what is it going to take? So when it comes to sacrificing, like, can he ever drink beer?
Well, not at 14.
Not at 14, of course. Maybe if he's in Europe, I don't know.
Yeah, if you're in Europe, then you definitely can.
But I mean, like let's say he's playing in the juniors, top level juniors, and he's like 19. Maybe he's even been drafted. Can he start drinking beers when he's 19, or is that something you got to swear off until
I mean, I think
won a couple of Stanley Cups?
No, you can have a few more when you win a couple of Stanley Cups. No, it's time and place, right? I mean, you got to be smart with it. It's like anything in moderation. Stuff's okay. If you're of legal age and you have a couple days off between a game, obviously going out and enjoying a few beers is fine. But it's when you go out and you get plastered, you're up until 4 or 5 in the morning, and you have to have a practice or training session the next day. Well, that training session is going to be a joke. You're not going to be able to commit yourself to it. You're not going to get anything away from it. So you kind of just have to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, where are my priorities? What do I truly want to get out of this? Yeah. And if it is to make it at the highest level possible, then there's certain things you might have to do different than the next guy. If some guy has more talent than you, he might be able to get away with going out and partying a few more times than you.
Right.
So, I mean, I wouldn't leave anything to chance, right? If, like I said, there's always another party. There's always another opportunity to drink a beer. It'll taste much better if you make it to the NHL, if you win a Stanley Cup.
That's right.
The beer tastes way better than if you're just some party on a Friday night or Thursday night at some junior party. Like, it doesn't. Exactly. that one's not as good. That one will happen again.
Yeah.
But it's the big special moments that.
That's a good point. The quality of the party is going to be much better when you're with people who are committed, dedicated, and champions.
Yeah.
So, like, how many times do you practice? How many times does a, say, 17-year-old practice? How many games do you have a week? And how many times should they be in the gym during the on-season and off-season? So just trying to get a picture of, like, what your daily routine is like as a potential professional hockey player.
If you're 17, you're playing in the WHL, so the Western Hockey League. So the Kelowna Rockets is our local team here. Right. And so that's major junior. So majority of those guys get drafted to the NHL. Right. The Tier 2 junior, so Junior A, the Westside Warriors and Penticton Vs and Vernon Vipers, those guys get drafted as well, more now than when I was going through the ranks.
Because they have like 10, 12 rounds of draft
I think there's 7. Maybe there used to be 8. I think there might be 7 now. Don't quote me on that. I should know. Being a hockey guy. Right. Baseball has like 20.
Yeah, that's right. They shut the TVs off after round 7 or something, but they keep going.
Yeah.
For a few more days.
Because the guys that play Junior A, so like Westside or Vernon, they'll go off to university after and they'll play another 4 years. And so those NHL teams get a longer time to watch them, where the major junior guys, after they get drafted, they have a shorter window to make the NHL. So if we're to use the example of a major junior player, they're playing about 70 games a year plus playoffs.
Right.
So their schedule is a lot fuller than a junior A player. So, I mean, they're on the ice as much as they can be around
2 to 3 games a week.
They'll play 2 to 3 games a week, and then they'll practice,
every day.
3 times a week. Yeah. If they have travel, then it's a different story, but sometimes they'll practice, get on the bus, then travel to a game, play the next day. So they try and get in as much on-ice preparation as possible. So now you got to start trying to plan their off-ice. It's tough because priority comes games first, practice seconds, and then it's working out. So you might get 1 to 2 times in the gym a week with these guys. And the time in the gym might be 30 to 45 minutes. You don't have much time with them because these guys are also going to school. Some of them might have part-time jobs, probably not. But, they're either going to high school or some are taking university classes. And so their schedule's pretty full, plus all their games. So you're looking at 1 to 2 training sessions a week, half hour to 45 minutes. Right. It's tough. In the off season now, 5 days a week, you're looking at, for my guys, we're in there an hour to an hour and a half a day.
Right.
Yeah. And it's full. And I mean, it's not an hour and a half of busting your ass. It's preparing yourself to bust your ass. So we'll take about 25 to 35 minutes to warm up appropriately, get all the joints moving properly, get, the core firing properly, the stabilizers fire, and then we'll progress, and then we'll hit our workout. And the actual meat and potatoes of the workout will be about 45 to an hour. And then, your cool down after. So you're looking at an hour and a half in the gym.
5 days.
5 days a week, yeah.
Do any of the guys do more than that? Like, I was watching an interview with Kobe Bryant, the basketball player.
Yeah.
And he was like, he gets up at 4, he has some cereal, he goes in the gym for 2 hours, and he would, come home, relax, and he'd go back. And they said, why do you do that? Like, you're crazy. And he's like, because when you add up the time over 3-4 years, I'm so far ahead of everybody else, right? Do you have any guys like that are kind of obsessed that are?
There's a few guys, that just, they feel like more is better.
Yeah.
And more is only better if you're doing the right stuff.
Right.
Extra.
Right.
If you're getting 3 hard workouts in a day, well, you're going to hinder yourself. But if you want to, work out for an hour and a half, shoot pucks for an hour, work on your stick handling for an hour. Yeah. Well, those are all different things.
Yeah.
So they will add up and make you better.
Makes sense.
So one of the girls I work with that plays university hockey, she'll shoot pucks for an hour and a half a day. She'll work on her stick handling, then we'll be in the gym for an hour and a half. And so she's one of those athletes that sometimes I have to tell her, like, hey, let's just take a day off today.
Right.
They come to the gym, you can see that just visually they're exhausted, right? You just take a look at them and you're like, hey, you can see like bags in their eyes. You have a conversation with them, they're just a little irritable, and so you start to like read body language. And you start to know, okay, they're pushing them a little too far. So you just end up giving them either a light workout that day so they can be ready to prepare harder for tomorrow. Or you just tell them like, hey, do nothing this weekend. I know you want to shoot pucks or go for hikes or whatever. Just do
Watch
nothing.
Some television.
Yeah, just like be a kid, So sometimes it's okay to be a kid.
Yeah.
And so I'd rather work with those athletes where you got to pull them back rather than trying to push the guys all the time, because that just gets boring.
Yeah.
And frustrating.
Yeah. Well, and it's really up to them too, right? Like you can't, if someone doesn't want to put 100%, I mean, there's a limit to how much you can do, right?
100%. I mean, as the old saying goes, you can bring the horse to the water, but can't make them drink it. So it's tough because you can see potential in guys, and sometimes they just don't have that internal drive, and so you try and push them. But I mean, if we're an hour and a half in the gym, they're 22 and a half hours by themselves the rest of the day. You don't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
They could be just eating like crap, being up all night drinking, or just not resting, not preparing their body, not acting like a professional. Yeah. So you can only do so much as a strength and conditioning coach.
And you train girls too.
Yeah.
Is there big differences between the methods and what you train?
Not the methods, but the girls listen a lot better.
They do?
Oh, yeah.
They take it more seriously in general?
I don't know if they take it more seriously, but they just listen. I mean, women just listen better. Yeah. At least in the gym setting. I don't know. Not in a house setting, but...
Well, they say girls' brains develop certain parts quicker than men's do. So
I would notice that
ability to focus is a little better.
At that 14, 15, 16 range, they definitely are a lot better. Once they get to the university age, and even for the guys, they know that this is what they want to do. They're fine. It's kind of dialing in the younger athlete, the male, where they're just all over the place.
Right.
And so, but as far as the methodology of training, it's very similar. There's certain aspects where females are more susceptible to certain types of injuries, so you just put a little more emphasis on that. And then just a little bit with their absolute strength, isn't as great as males, but the relative strength is very equal. And so it's just like certain rests and intensities, you'll just alter a little bit, but for the most part, it's very similar.
Right. Just want to ask you a little bit about nutrition and supplements. I know there's a whole list of rules about what's legal, what's not legal. Some of these things obviously can be harmful to health in long term, but certain things are not legal. So do you talk to your clients about nutrition and supplements and things like steroids? Are they on their own? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, especially at that. I mean, these 14-year-old kids, 13, they're not really starting to look into supplements as much. But once they can hit 14, they're exposed to it. The advertising is out there. Their other buddies are taking stuff. They, maybe from an older brother. And I ask them what they're taking. They tell me, and then a lot of times I tell them to stop taking it because they're taking stuff that's geared towards kids that are in their mid 20s to 30s, and even for them, it's not healthy for them to take. And now all of a sudden they're super young taking this stuff, so they're taking stuff with, high levels of caffeine in it, high levels of stimulant in it, and if they need to get jacked up at like 15, 16 for a workout, and this is something they truly want to do, well, what are they going to do when they're 30?
Yeah,
they have another 14 years of this, and they got to get jacked up now by taking a supplement. Like, they should have an abundance of energy as it is.
Right.
And so for the most part, I'll just tell them to stop taking everything. There's a few things like your BCAA, so your branched chain amino acids. So just a very 3 amino acids for them to take before their workout is huge. And then a protein and carbohydrate drink after.
Right.
Just very basic, simple stuff, right? The supplement industry is $1 billion industry, and they know how to make money. They know how to market to these kids, and all they're looking to do is make money.
Right.
And so it's for us professionals as strength and conditioning coaches to guide them in the right direction of getting them products that will actually make them better and not just fill people's pockets with cash.
Right. There's even corrupt doctors out there. We heard about it in baseball the last decade or so.
Rodriguez or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So, for enough money, they'll prescribe pretty much anything. Do you think there's a lot of that in junior hockey?
I don't think so. Obviously this is just from what you read in the newspapers and certain blogs you might read or videos you might see, most of this happens in the States because there's more financial benefit for it through the medical system, where Canada, I don't think, is quite as, I don't want to say corrupt as the word, but...
Well, the market's like 1/10 the size.
Yeah.
And if you're going to risk going to jail, like, there's not as much incentive maybe.
Yeah. And so I don't think for junior hockey, and hockey's a little different than other sports where, I mean, baseball is skill, but if you're skilled and just not strong enough, then you can be that much better. And that's why you see a lot of these guys getting caught with their PEDs.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden they go from hitting 10 home runs to 25 to 30, they get big contracts. Where in hockey, it's not just that one dimension of hitting a baseball. You have to be able to skate and shoot and pass and think the game and do everything at the same time.
Yes.
So just because you might be faster and bigger than someone else doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to play at that same level if you can't think the game or make a pass. So the physical attributes are beneficial, but I don't think to the same extent as maybe some of the other sports.
Yeah.
Like it'd be like basketball. Like if you were to, go on steroids in basketball, I don't think it's going to make you a better basketball player.
Right. It's not going to make you shoot better.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Shooting accuracy is probably like the biggest thing.
Yeah. So I don't think being bigger and stronger would help with that. And so hockey's more similar than I would say to like a basketball as far as like the skill portion of it goes. Yeah. And for my kids too, steroids are really stupid. So.
And if it ever comes up in conversation, you would tell them.
Yeah, I would tell them straight up. And I don't think it would really benefit them too much anyways.
Right.
There's way more negative that goes along with it than the positive that they might gain from it. So.
Right. Last question. Do you think if someone has average talent, if they, with enough dedication, they can make it to the NHL, that anyone can?
Well, I guess you'd have to define what average talent would be. Yeah. I think if you realize you had average talent, you'd have to pick a role in the NHL that you can make it to. So you'd have to be kind of one of those third line guys that just very smart defensively. So let's say you don't have a great shot, you can pass decent, but you think the game well. So I guess you wouldn't be average in that aspect, but maybe average in your other skills. And then you worked on just being faster and stronger and better conditioned so you can keep up. You probably could make it, but you'd have to, really niche yourself into one market as far as, being a third line shutdown guy. Yeah. And then being the best possible guy.
Yeah. I was thinking of a few historical examples like Marcel Leon and Doug Gilmour. Yeah. They're both well under 6 feet. Yeah. But they actually were pretty good goal scorers. Yeah. They were really fast and they worked like hell.
Yeah. And I think for Doug too, he had a very good sense for the game. Yeah. He could think very smart. Yeah. And that helps, right? I mean, nowadays the game's a lot faster. So I think a lot of those guys get buried. Yeah. Because they can't keep up. So scouts, might look at them and be like, they can think it, but they're just way too slow rather than give them a chance. Like, well, maybe he'll work at it. I think they get overlooked too quickly now, where back in the day, they're like, okay, he can't skate, but he's just so smart that we have to, have him on our team type thing. Yeah. Because the game's gotten so much faster now. So that's why it's important for these kids that might be able to shoot really well or think the game really well. Just, if they're a little slower, or they can't skate quite as well, that's a really easy thing to fix. You have to put some work in, just some sweat. Right. Where if you can't think the game, that's harder to work on, right? Yeah. And so these kids that I remember, he was our leading scorer in university, probably one of the worst skaters I've ever seen in my life, and he would admit to it, but he was just so much smarter than everyone else and had a great shot that he led our team in points every year, and he led the league in points. So if he was to play nowadays, I think he'd get overlooked because he was that bad of a skater. But if he was to put the work in it, then he'd be fine. So these kids, it comes down to just putting the effort in and dedicating yourself to it, and you will make that team you want to make. You will move up the ranks. You will get your shot. Because I feel that kids pretend to work hard nowadays. But only certain ones actually work hard and do the right things to get better, right? We all have the same amount of time and energy, but it depends on what you're putting that, your resources into. Yeah. So what's your return on your investment, right? If your investment is time and energy, put in the right stuff and you'll get the right return.
Yeah. A good coach always helps, right?
Yeah, well, hopefully. Yeah.
Do you take on individual clients? Or are you coaching teams or?
Majority of my clients are individual. Last year I worked with about 5 hockey teams through minor hockey. This year they just restructured kind of how they're allocating the money for their training. And so I think they're putting more towards it on ice. Mm-hmm. And so for the off ice stuff now it's more individual based where I work with the athletes.
Yeah.
And but I group them depending on their gym skill level together. So with the minor midgets that I train, there's about 6 of them. So depending on the day, I might have 3 to 6 guys depending on their school schedule, their work schedule, and then so they're individual, but they're small little groups, and they're all training more or less to the same goals. One player might need to be a little more explosive than the other, where another player needs to be more stable and strong. So I'll alter their program accordingly to what their specific needs
That's great.
are. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll put links to whatever you've got as far as website or Instagram or whatever
that'd be perfect.
in the show notes. And would you like to nominate anybody?
Yeah.
The show?
Yeah. His name is Brent Carmichael. He used to be a baseball player, so I met him actually at the gym. He'd be in there working out all the time, more chatting than working out, but he'd be in there. He was rehabbing his knee, and so we just started talking about training and life and this and that, and then he decided that he was kind of done with the whole traveling around from town to town, and just it's a grind.
So he was a minor league
baseball player.
And that's pretty tough. They play so many games, and you're on buses, motels.
That they have quite the schedule. And he was coming back from, I think it was meniscus, and then he just he's music producer in town. Yeah, and so he kind of he works with that and has his own little company, Axel and Grit, and just kind of does everything. He's a good guy.
Nice.
Yeah,
I love baseball, so
very positive
I'd love
guy.
To ask him about that. Music too. So I think it'd be a great conversation.
Yeah, he has a good personality. So
cool. Well, that's great. Thanks so much for your time, Travis.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's fun.
Luke Mankus is a realtor. He loves what he does. We asked Luke if he had any regrets about moving here in 2011. And he always says, yeah, one regret. And that is he didn't move here sooner. When Luke came here, he didn't know anyone. He didn't know the neighborhoods or anything or anyone besides his daughter, who was 6 years old at the time. So he knows what it's like. Now, he's an expert and has helped well over 100 single people, couples, families, and investors with their real estate needs in the Okanagan. If you're new to our beautiful city, Luke can help you get connected with great lawyers, dentists, carpenters, landscapers, swimming pool installers, you name it. And whether you're new to Kelowna or not, Luke knows real estate. He can help you find a great property, negotiate a good deal, and hold your hand all the way through the process until the day you get your shiny new set of keys. Luke is known as a no-pressure kind of guy. He's had clients where it took even a year or more to get them into a property. He just doesn't believe in rushing things. On the other hand, when you decide it's time to act, he's diligent and he'll work day and night until the job is done. Give Luke Mankus a call or a text message at any time. 778-215-4273. Again, that's 778-215-4273. 778-215-4273 to chat with Luke about real estate.